8:20 in the morning. I am going right back to the phone because joining me now is former Speaker of the House Marco Rubio, the Senate candidate, front-runner on the Republican side, who is obviously calling for me from his home with all his children around. Let me ask you a specific question, specific to a thing that is near and dear to my heart, the FairTax. You know, we can talk about deficit spending, we can talk about all that stuff, but we are looking, especially with the president's new budget, at a series of elevating our progressive tax structure to be punitive for people who are successful. Would you be in favor of a fair tax, which is a retail sales tax, so it would spread that pain more evenly across society, and people would literally have the option of opting out in a way?
You know, well, look, the fair tax is. I'm a supporter of tax simplification and tax, fairness. The fair tax is the fairest way to do that and the best. And so I'm a long-time supporter of the fair tax. Now, there's a political impediment to it, and that means the abolition of the income tax. I mean, if you pass a fair tax but you don't get rid of the income tax in the Constitution, you're going to end up having both at some point.
Right.
So I think that has to happen first, and I would be supportive of that. But I have always supported the fair tax, continue to support the fair tax. I think it's the best of all the plans that are out there. Not sure if it has the political support yet in Washington. We got to keep working on it. But I do believe that within our lifetime, and I mean within the near future, we will have an opportunity in this country to do something like the fair tax if we continue to educate people on it. I know the polls show that the majority of people don't support it, but here's the truth. I have never met anybody who, after I explain the fair tax to them, are not convinced that it's better than what we have right now. But you got to explain it to them, because otherwise it's mischaracterized as a tax increase. For example, here in Florida, when I was Speaker, I wanted to eliminate the property tax and give every county the option of replacing it with a sales tax instead of it, because I think a consumption tax is a much fairer tax than a property tax or an income tax. Today, Charlie Crist and his campaign used that against me. They say, well, Marco Rubio wanted to raise your sales tax. Of course, they ignore that I wanted to abolish the property tax. That's the same attack they use against the fair tax. So there's some education that has to continue to go on before I think the fair tax is ready to go, but I do support it. I have
about a minute and a half left, so I want to ask you this question, which I got in various forms 100 different ways in the past 24 hours. How do we know, how do conservatives know that you are not just talking the talk, and that when you get to Washington, you're going to turn into something other than what you've presented yourself as? We're all a little gun-shy right now. How do you, Marco Rubio, address that concern?
Well, two things. First of all, you have to see that elections are choices, and I clearly am running against somebody who is not going to go to Washington and stand up for our principles. So just that alone, I think, is a compelling argument. But let me go further. I have a record of public service. Throughout my record of public service in Tallahassee, I was constantly accused by the mainstream media of being too far to the right, of being too conservative, of being outdated in my political view of the world. The St. Pete Times, in an editorial, actually wrote at the end of my speakership that I was a disappointment because I clung to the conservatism of Jeb Bush instead of embracing the moderation of a Charlie Crist. So, I mean, it's been well documented that I have been a limited government believer since before this campaign. I mean, I have a record of service on those principles. And more importantly, I'm the only one in this race talking about these things beyond the slogans. I mean, Charlie's not talking about these issues beyond slogans. For example, he says he's pro-life, but he doesn't believe Roe versus Wade should be overturned. Those are the kinds of things that voters need to look at. And I think they make the compelling argument that our campaign is the only limited government campaign in this primary.
Former Speaker of the House, Marco Rubio, and I love saying U.S. Senate candidate frontrunner. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We will see you in 1 week at Harborside Event Center to celebrate the hug, because hugs matter. Hugs matter. Marco Rubio.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us this morning. We shall be back after the news, traffic, and weather with Josh Carroll. Don't go anywhere.